Welcome everybody to this interview. My name is Lenny. This is an interview for a school project that I'm doing, and I am here today with a very special guest, with Steven Whitsett. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This really is an honor.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. You might want to introduce yourself, tell the people who you are, tell them, what was your background? Why did I invite you?
Why did you invite me? It's funny that you asked why did you invite me when we're sitting in my living room. So welcome to my house.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm always kind of struck when people ask me to introduce myself and explain myself because I don't know what people should know or what they want to know. So let me begin by saying that, as I mentioned, we're in my living room here in southern Germany. You are in a German gymnasium.
Yep.
And we're doing this interview. And if I understand correctly, you're interviewing me about the American penal system.
Of course. That's what I'm doing, yeah.
Okay. Unfortunately, I have a great deal of experience with the American penal system. While I am active in the human rights sector when it comes to human rights law in the United States, obviously, if I'm living in Germany, somebody has to ask the question, why am I living here in Germany instead of in the United States? And that's because I myself raised a human rights complaint in a German court against the United States, specifically against the United States penal system. And the reason being is that, and I'm certainly not proud to say this, I spent 22 years in the American penal system as a prisoner, and that includes 3,651 consecutive days in isolation, including 1 year on America's death row. Now, I know we don't have a death row here in Europe, but I imagine that all of your viewers are going to know what death row is. I think it's kind of a little famous. So the only other thing I would add to that is, in case people are wondering how you and I know each other, not only do we live in the same town, but we belong to the same flying club. And as pure luck, or maybe not luck, as grace would have it, we ended up getting our pilot licenses on the exact same day. We are both pilots.
Yep.
On the same day.
Exactly.
That was a good day.
Oh yeah, it was.
And it was through our flight training that you and I got to know each other. I guess we've been friends now. And I say friends.
Yeah.
God, at least 3 years?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, we've been flying together.
Yeah. It's been a long time, eh?
And we can make an entire video on just some of our adventures flying together.
Oh, yeah.
We really, honestly, with footage.
Yeah, with footage.
With footage.
We had some great experience with each other, flying and just exploring the world of flying. But this video is not about flying.
Unfortunately.
This video is about the U.S. penal system. And I have a few questions. So first, what made you, or why did you came into the U.S. penal system at first glance? What happened?
Okay. And we should say, for your video, that I don't know most of these questions coming at me.
No.
So if I have to take a second to think, allow me to think through it, because I'd rather give you an accurate and true answer.
Of course.
The very short version is that while I was serving in the United States Navy, I had the opportunity to go back to university and get a specialized degree in psychology, because the intent was I would work in the medical corps of the United States Navy. And as part of my studies at a university in Fort Lauderdale, I don't know how many people know where Fort Lauderdale is, but you certainly know where Miami is. My university was very near Miami, like very near. And as part of my studies, I was working in, this is kind of complicated, a juvenile inpatient mental health treatment facility. And what that means is I was conducting research at a facility where teenagers were sent after they had been accused or convicted of sex-related offenses in Florida, in the state of Florida where I was living. And they would come here into this treatment center and get treatment. which is, that's probably a topic all its own. While I was in this treatment center, keeping in mind I was 22 years old at the time, so I was young. It's only 22. I didn't think 22 was young back then, but from my age now, it was very young. But one of the inpatient people there, a 15-year-old by the name of Robert, I'm omitting his last name, he accused me of engaging in some inappropriate behavior with him. And as a result, under the laws in the United States, which are rather severe, I was sentenced to 8 years of prison. And things kind of went off the rails from there. So originally I had an 8-year prison sentence, thanks to Robert. And forgive me, let me say this. Robert was, by the time I met him, already a twice convicted sex offender. However, that in no way, shape, or form negates the fact that if I did something inappropriate, it was still inappropriate. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm 100% innocent. I will not say that. I will say that most of what he said was an exaggeration of the truth, but I'm not going to claim that I was completely innocent. That would be a lie.
Okay.
So I deserved the attention of the penal system.
Yeah. And what happened then? So he accused you. You got your sentence for 8 years, and as I know of, you served those 8 years, and then things got a bit south. I mean,
they went south.
They went south. Do you want to explain, or
do I want to, or will I? The answer is no, I don't want to. But for you, I will explain. Obviously, there's a big difference between the 8 years prison that I was sentenced to, and I told you a moment ago that I served 22 years. And that's because while I was in prison, the state of Florida passed a new law that basically said it doesn't matter what the judge in your case sentenced you to, we can change it. And so effectively what the government said was that after my prison sentence was finished, they decided I had not spent enough time in prison, and so they transferred me to a civilian prison where I could have remained for the rest of my life while undergoing therapy.
Okay. So we are talking about the Jimmy Rice Act?
We're talking about the Jimmy Rice Act.
Yes.
I need to make one other point. When I say that I received an 8-year prison sentence in Germany, that sounds like a lot of time. That sounds like, oh, it must have been a really serious crime. In the United States, it's actually the opposite. They give out very, very long prison sentences for things that here in Germany you don't even get arrested for. So had this been in Germany, I would never have been arrested. Absolutely, there wouldn't have been any charges.
Yeah.
But because Florida sentences people heavily, 8 years is actually a light sentence. Yeah.
And then you this law got passed, and what were your thoughts in that moment? I remember you made off camera. You made a really good comparison from the example that you gave me.
Oh, from you mowing my lawn.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. When you asked that question just now, you actually made me remember something from back then. You asked me what was my thought but you didn't phrase it the way I would have. And it made it sound like you were asking me what were my thoughts when the law was passed. Because when the law was passed, we all knew about this law, and it supposedly was only going after the worst of the worst prisoners, only the most dangerous people, so that the government could keep them off the streets. Because because my charges were light, I never thought that law would apply to me. At no time did I think that law was going to hold me. However, when my prison sentence ended on September 13th, 1999, when my partner, my boyfriend, was out in the parking lot of the prison waiting to pick me up, they took me to the front gate, and instead of releasing me, they put me in handcuffs, put me inside of a prison transport van, and sent me across the state to this civilian prison. I had no idea this was going to happen. So instead of this being like one of the most joyous days of my life, getting out of prison, returning to my family, to my loved ones, that was all ripped away. And it really, really angered me, obviously, because I felt it was fundamentally unfair. For instance, if you and I have an agreement for something, and off camera we were talking about you mowing my yard. I live in a house with 2 large gardens, and you are welcome to mow them. But if I hire you and ask you to mow my lawn for 20 euro, after you're done mowing the lawn, you expect to get the 20 euro and then go about your business.
Yes.
But if I change my mind and I say, nah, Lenny, mowing the lawn wasn't enough. Now I want you to trim my hedges and cut my trees. Well, that wasn't part of the original deal. And you're going to be a little upset because now your 20 euro is worth less than it was because you more work went into it than the money you got. So let's say you trim my bushes, cut my trees, mow my lawn, and then I decide, no, now I need you to wash my car for the 20 euro, and then I'll give you the money. There's nothing fair about that. That's not what we agreed on. So when I was sentenced in the court, there was an understanding in writing with my attorney and the attorney from the government where we said, okay, I'm going to get an 8-year prison sentence. So then I do what I'm supposed to. I finish my prison sentence. And then you decide it's not enough. I need to serve more time. That's not what we agreed on.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a violation of trust. So where you're sending me to prison to rehabilitate me, to correct my behavior, because it's why we call it the Department of Corrections, instead of you correcting my behavior in a positive way, now you've made me angry. And if I could use one other example, let's say when you were a child and there were cookies in your kitchen and your mother told you don't take a cookie before dinner, but you do. If your mother swats you on the butt or raises her voice or whatever we do in Germany, you would understand you're being disciplined and that's not a problem. You're not going to be upset about it. But if your mother takes a leather belt and whips you on your butt until there are blood streaks coming down, that's no longer discipline. That's abuse. And you, as a child, are going to learn a completely different lesson than the one they intended you to learn. And that's what happened with me. Instead of teaching me the lesson you wanted to, all you did was piss me off. It's unfair.
Yeah.
I lost faith in my government. It's when I began losing faith in my government.
Yeah. And
sorry if that was too lengthy of an answer.
No, really. So then you got put into this other correctional institution in this
civilian prison.
Yeah. And then what happened after that?
The part I really don't like talking about. I know it's really interesting for other people. I had to live it, so it doesn't carry quite the same interest factor. But effectively, I believed that I had been I already believed that I'd gone to prison for too much time for what was a minor offense. But now you're holding me beyond my prison sentence. You violated my trust. You have violated the agreement. Why am I sitting here? In a facility where you're telling me you will hold me for the rest of my life until you think I'm no longer a threat to the community. But I was already no threat to the community. And it was fundamentally unfair. And every morning that I woke up in this civilian prison, surrounded by a bunch of other prisoners, when my prison sentence was finished, I was angry. And it wasn't fair. My boyfriend, who stood by me during this, he agreed with me. And so my boyfriend thought it would be a great idea. Maybe I encouraged him a little. He thought it would be a great idea to go get helicopter lessons. So he started learning to fly helicopters in Fort Lauderdale. And when we were ready, I should also mention that he found a way to smuggle a 9mm submachine gun to me in the prison system. So on the day in question, it's not funny. It's not funny. I guess it is.
Sorry.
So on the day in question, which was June of 2000, on one particular day, I went outside the housing unit that I was in and went to the recreation yard. And there was a fence that separated where we were allowed to be on the recreation yard from an area where we were not allowed to be. And I stayed out on I think it was the volleyball court. I don't remember all the details anymore. It's been more than 20 years. But I remember standing outside and hearing the sound of a helicopter in the distance. And when I knew that it was close enough, it was just about to come over a row of trees, I climbed that interior fence and jumped into that open area where he appeared and landed a helicopter directly onto the prison grounds. I boarded the helicopter, and I was there, and I can't exactly tell you what happened next. There's speculation on it. But the helicopter became unstable when I climbed aboard, either because I had put too much weight on my side, or there's a theory that our rotors clipped a light pole on the way out of the facility. I'm not sure what happened. So the helicopter's unstable. I get on board, and we took off, and we started heading directly south. And while we were coming over the fence, there were two prison vans that had guards in them that came and stopped face to face right over the path we were flying. And they started pointing shotguns at us, at me. And from where I was seated in the helicopter, I just leaned the barrel of the weapon over so that they could see it. And it didn't take a genius to figure out that I had more firepower than they did, and that was a fight they were not going to win. Now, in truth, I didn't want to hurt anybody. That wasn't the plan. But in the same respect, I wasn't going to be a victim. So, and I'm not justifying what I did. Looking back, dumbest thing I could have possibly done, but it's what happened. So we fly out of the facility. We've broken out of prison, and either because someone shot our tail off or because we had damaged the engine when we clipped the light pole again. I was there. I don't know what happened. The aircraft started experiencing trouble in the air. And I remember specifically as we were moving forward that I thought we weren't gaining altitude quickly enough to get over the trees ahead of us. And I was actually growing concerned. And I was about to say something to my partner when there was an orange light on our dashboard that started flashing, and there was a really loud buzzing. And I remember him saying, "Oh shit." And I don't remember anything after that. The helicopter fell out of the sky, landed on a tree, and if you've seen the photographs online, there are plenty of photographs on YouTube of my crash. The debris was everywhere, and the tail of the helicopter was somewhere else completely, which is why there's some speculation the tail was shot off. And after I didn't have my safety belt on, so when we hit the ground, I got thrown through the windshield, which is when I sliced my hand, which amazingly is the only injury we suffered. And I landed in the sand because this was an orange grove, and orange trees grow in sand. And I was looking up at the sky, and I remember thinking that I was dead. And I was actually okay with it. It's like this, I was okay with it. And then I heard him behind me climbing out of the debris, and I realized, where I was and what had happened. And I got up, ran over the wreckage, helped him get out, grabbed our weapons, and we fled on foot. And for the next, I'm just going to anticipate your next question. For the next roughly 40 hours, maybe, we had something in the neighborhood of 220 police officers and military, 20 ground vehicles, 4 canine units, 2 SWAT teams, which are police commandos, and 2 helicopters hunting for us. And we still got away.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the next day we were
exactly
captured.
And
sorry if that was too long.
No, not at all.